We broke the treaty expecting the humans to become monsters. That was the whole calculation, the thing our war planners staked everything on. That if we struck first and struck hard, the humans would do what their fearsome reputation promised, would unleash the legendary horrors we had all heard about, the things the galaxy whispered humans did in war, and that the galaxy, seeing those horrors, would turn against Earth and leave the Empire free to win. We broke the peace to provoke the monster, so the galaxy would see the monster. The humans did not become monsters. That is the thing none of us were prepared for, the thing that beat us more completely than any horror could have. We broke the treaty and we braced for the infamous human savagery, the thing the galaxy called half in fear, half as a grim joke, the Geneva Suggestion. And what we got instead was something far stranger, far more disciplined, and in the end far more terrifying than savagery, because savagery we knew how to fight, and this we did not. I am Commandant Iax of the Vorth Imperium, and I was one of the officers who broke the peace, and I am going to tell you what humanity actually unleashed when we gave them every reason to become the monster we'd been told they were, and why it was the worst possible thing they could have done to us, and the best thing they could have done for the galaxy. You have to understand the reputation first, the thing we believed about humans, because the whole disaster grew from it. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, and it was dark. They were the newcomers, the Deathworlders, the species that had clawed its way up off a planet that was constantly trying to kill it, and they came with stories attached, stories about how humans fought, about what they were willing to do, about a savagery that the older, gentler species of the galaxy found genuinely frightening. The Vorth were one of those older species, not gentle exactly. We were an imperial people and we had fought our share of wars, but old and proud, and accustomed to a galaxy whose ways we understood. And humans did not fit the ways we understood. They unsettled us. There was something about a species that came up off a death world, that had survived a planet actively trying to kill it for 1,000,000 years, that made the older peoples of the galaxy deeply uneasy, the way you are uneasy around a thing that has survived what should have killed it. And at the center of all these stories, the darkest of them, was the thing the galaxy called the Geneva Suggestion. Here is what we believed it meant. Humans, the story went, had once written down a set of rules for war, limits, restrictions, things that even in war you were not supposed to do, named for some place on their homeworld called Geneva. And the joke, the dark galactic joke, was that humans did not treat these rules as restrictions at all. They treated them as a suggestion, a list of the terrible things one could do in war, which humans, being humans, took as inspiration rather than prohibition. The Geneva Suggestion, the galaxy said, was the catalog of human atrocity. To read it was to understand the full range of what humans were willing to do to one another, and therefore what they would do to you. And the dark joke of it was that if humans had needed to write down, "Do not do these things," it could only be because humans were the kind of creatures who would do these things, who had to be told not to, who carried the capacity for every horror on the list and merely chose, on their better days, to restrain it. That was the reputation. That was what the Vorth Imperium believed about the species we shared a tense border and an uneasy peace treaty with. And I want to be honest about how completely we believed it, because the completeness of our belief is the measure of our coming disaster. We did not think humans were possibly savage. We thought they were definitionally savage. That savagery was the human essence, barely leashed, and that the leash was a thing of convenience that would snap the moment humans were truly provoked. We had built an entire understanding of an entire species on a misreading of a single document, and we had never once thought to check whether the misreading was true, because the misreading flattered our fear and confirmed what we already believed about Deathworlders. Our war planners, in their cleverness, had built a strategy on it. The Imperium wanted Earth's border territories, rich systems, contested for a generation, held by humanity under the terms of a peace treaty that both sides had signed, and that had kept an uneasy quiet for years. The treaty was in our way, and our planners had calculated with great confidence a way around it. They reasoned thus: humans are savages, barely restrained. If we break the treaty and attack them hard enough, we will provoke the savage. The savage will respond with the Geneva Suggestion, the full catalogue of human horror. And the rest of the galaxy, which fears human savagery exactly as much as we do, will see those horrors and recoil, will refuse to stand with a species committing such atrocities, will perhaps even join us against the monster. We break the peace, provoke the monster, and let the monster's own savagery do our diplomatic work, isolating Earth and leaving the Imperium a free hand to take the territories. It was elegant. I remember the briefing where it was presented, the confidence in the room, the war planners walking us through it like a proof. The entire plan rested on a single assumption, that humans would behave like the monsters we believed them to be, and not one officer in that room, myself included, questioned the assumption, because the assumption was not a hypothesis to us. It was a known fact about the universe, as solid as gravity. Humans were savages. Provoke them and the savagery would come. The plan could not fail because the thing it depended on was simply true. I was the officer chosen to execute the opening strike, the treaty breaker, the one who would throw the first blow and provoke the monster. So I am the one who can tell you, better than anyone, exactly how wrong every certainty in that briefing room turned out to be. I led the attack that broke the treaty. I will not dwell on it. It is not the part of the story I am proud of, and there is no honor in being the one who shattered a peace under which both peoples had lived quietly for years. But I will tell you one thing about it, because it matters for what came after. As we prepared the strike, I had access to the human border territory's communications. We had been listening, of course, for a long time, the way you listen to a neighbor you intend to rob. And in all that listening, I had never once heard the humans of those territories speak like savages. I heard them speak like people. Farmers worrying about harvests, families, ordinary lives, the small business of people living quietly on a frontier. I noticed it distantly and I dismissed it because it did not fit what I knew about humans, and when a fact does not fit what you know, the easy thing, the thing I did, the thing that haunts me is to discard the fact rather than question the knowledge. I heard humans being ordinary and human, and I told myself it was a mask, that the savage was underneath waiting, and that when I struck, the savage would come out. I struck a people I had heard living ordinary lives, and I told myself they were monsters, because believing they were monsters was easier than facing what I was actually about to do. We hit them, hard and fast, the way our planners had designed it, a deliberate, treaty-breaking blow, calculated to be brutal enough to provoke the legendary human response. We struck the border territories without warning. We took ground. We hurt them. And then we dug in and we braced and we waited for the Geneva Suggestion to come down on us. I want you to understand the state we were in, waiting. We were afraid, all of us, from the command staff to the lowest soldier, because we had been raised on the stories of human savagery, and we had just deliberately provoked it, and we expected, genuinely expected, the horrors to begin. You could feel it through the whole invasion force, the dread. Soldiers who had been confident during the planning grew quiet once the blow was struck, because now the thing was done and the monster was provoked, and somewhere out there in the dark, the Geneva Suggestion was being prepared for us. Veterans told the young ones what to expect. The horrors humans were said to visit on those who crossed them, each story worse than the last, the accumulated nightmares of a galaxy that had decided long ago what humans were. We had steeled ourselves for atrocity. We had prepared our soldiers for the worst the galaxy could imagine, because we believed we had just kicked open the door to hell, and that hell was about to come through it. Some of our soldiers, I learned later, had made the small arrangements that men make when they do not expect to survive, or expect to survive something worse than death. That was the state we had put ourselves in with our clever plan. We had terrified our own army by provoking a monster, and now we waited, sick with dread, for the monster to arrive. And here is what came through the door instead. Here is what humanity actually unleashed when we broke the peace and provoked the monster. They fought back. Hard, make no mistake, the human counterattack was fierce, disciplined, overwhelming. They were deathworlders and they fought like it, and they took back their border territories and pushed us reeling. They were terrifyingly good at war. The speed of it, the coordination, the sheer competence of the human military response. It was more than we had bargained for, and we were losing ground within days, the territories we had seized slipping back out of our grip. So it is not that the humans were soft. I need you to understand that, because it is essential to everything. The humans were not soft. They were among the most formidable warriors the galaxy had ever produced, and they were beating us soundly. But as the human counterattack rolled over us, as we braced at every moment for the savagery to begin, for the Geneva Suggestion to reveal itself, it did not come. The humans fought us with overwhelming force and skill, and they did not commit a single one of the horrors we had expected. Not one. They took prisoners, and the prisoners were not tortured, were not slaughtered, were treated. We could not understand this, correctly, fed and tended and held according to rules. They did not target our civilians. When our civilian transports fled the contested systems, the humans let them go, did not fire on them, in some cases escorted them to safety, which made no sense to us at all. They did not poison our worlds or burn our cities, or do any of the 1,000 things the Geneva Suggestion promised. They fought us with total ferocity and total restraint at the same time, and the combination was something none of us had ever seen and none of us knew how to fight, because our entire strategy, our entire understanding of humans, our entire plan for victory, had depended on a savagery that simply was not coming. I have to tell you about the prisoners, because the prisoners were where I first understood that everything we believed was wrong, and because I became one of them. My own unit was overrun in the human counterattack, and I was captured. Commandant Iax, the officer who broke the peace, the one who had led the treaty-breaking strike, taken prisoner by the very humans whose savagery I had deliberately provoked. There is a particular horror in being the architect of an atrocity strike and falling into the hands of the people you struck, and I felt all of it as they took me. I was disarmed, bound, led away, and I was certain that I knew what was coming. I was not just any prisoner. I was the treaty breaker, the one who had thrown the first blow, the perfect target for the Geneva Suggestion, the ideal subject on whom humans would surely demonstrate the full catalogue of their famous horrors. I had provoked the monster, and now I was in the monster's hands, the most deserving victim imaginable, and I waited for the savagery to begin, and I had made my peace, as much as one can, with the terrible things I was sure were about to happen to me. They did not happen. None of them happened. The humans processed me as a prisoner of war correctly, according to those same Geneva rules I had thought were a suggestion. I was given a medical examination. My minor wounds were tended by a human medic who treated me, the enemy commandant, no differently than I imagined they would have treated their own wounded, efficiently, without cruelty, even with a kind of rough gentleness that I found more disorienting than any blow would have been. I was fed. The food was strange but adequate and given without spite. I was held securely but not cruelly, in conditions that were uncomfortable but not designed to break me. I was questioned, but the questioning was just that, questioning, the ordinary intelligence gathering of war, not the torture I had braced for, not the savage extraction of the Geneva Suggestion. And at every single moment I waited for the real treatment to begin, the savage treatment, the true human treatment that all this correctness must surely be concealing. And at every moment it did not come, and the not coming was its own kind of torment, worse in some ways than the savagery would have been, because I could not understand it, and a thing you cannot understand is more frightening than a thing you can. I lay in my secure but humane confinement, the architect of an unprovoked attack, being treated with baffling correctness by the people I had wronged, and I felt my entire understanding of the universe beginning to crack, because nothing that was happening to me was possible according to everything I knew about humans. Finally I asked, I had to. The not knowing was unbearable. A human officer was overseeing the prisoners. A major, I learned, a woman named Reyes, who had the bearing of someone who had seen a great deal of war and been changed by it but not hardened past feeling. And when she came through the holding area, doing whatever round she did, I called out to her, the question burning in me, the question I could not hold in any longer. When does it start? The Geneva Suggestion. The things your kind does. I broke the treaty. I led the attack. I'm the architect of the whole thing. I'm the one you should want to make an example of, the one who deserves the worst you have. So when does it start? What are you waiting for? I would rather know than keep waiting for it. And Major Reyes stopped and turned and looked at me, really looked, the way you look at something you're trying to understand, and her face did a complicated thing. Surprise first. Then a kind of grim, tired understanding, as if a piece of some larger puzzle had just clicked into place for her. And then something almost like sadness, which was the last thing I expected to see on the face of the enemy I had wronged. The Geneva Suggestion, she said slowly. Right. I've heard what you people think that means. The whole galaxy's got the same story, don't they, that it's our list of horrors, our to-do list for war. She let out a breath. You've got it exactly backwards, Commandant. Exactly, completely backwards. And the fact that you broke a peace treaty, got your own soldiers killed, got our people killed, started a whole war because your people had it backwards, because you never once bothered to actually check what the thing meant before you bet a war on it. She shook her head. That might be the saddest thing I've heard this entire war. You provoked us into a war over a misunderstanding. You attacked us because you were afraid of a monster that was never real. And she crouched down to my level so that we were looking at each other directly, enemy to enemy, and she explained the thing that unmade my entire understanding of humanity. The Geneva Conventions, she said, aren't a list of things we do. They're a list of things we don't do. They're the rules, our rules that we wrote for ourselves, the lines we decided we would not cross even in war, even against an enemy, even when we're furious, even when they started it. They came out of the worst things we ever did to each other. A long time ago, back on Earth, we did terrible things, Commandant. I won't pretend we didn't. We have every horror you imagine in our history and worse. But that's the point. We did those things, and then we looked at what we'd done and we said never again, and we wrote it down. We made ourselves a promise, the hardest promise a people ever made to itself, that there are things we will not do to each other or to anyone, no matter what, because the moment we do them, we stop being the kind of people worth fighting for in the first place. She let that sit for a moment. Somewhere along the way, your galaxy got the story twisted, turned our list of never-agains into a to-do list, decided Geneva Suggestion meant we ignore the limits and do every horror anyway. And honestly, I get why. We're Deathworlders. We fight hard, we scare you, and it fits the story you wanted to tell about us, the savage that has to be told not to be savage. It's a flattering story for you. It makes your fear make sense. Her voice hardened. But it's backwards. The infamous thing about humans, the thing you should actually have been afraid of, isn't that we ignore the rules of war. It's that we keep them. Even now. Even with you. Even though you broke a peace treaty and attacked my people without warning, and I am standing here looking at the man who gave the order, and there is a part of me that wants you to suffer for it more than I've wanted anything in a long time. I don't get to do that. None of us do, because those rules are the whole point. They're the thing that makes us us, and the day we throw them away to make an enemy suffer is the day we become something not worth saving. So you can stop waiting, Commandant. The savagery isn't coming. It was never coming. That's not what we are. You bet a war on us being monsters, and we're not, and now you're going to have to survive what we actually are instead. That makes no sense, I said, because it didn't, not to me, not yet. You're at war. We attacked you without warning, without honor. Restraint is weakness. If you have the power to make us suffer and you choose not to use it, you are simply weaker than a people who would. Your rules are a handicap. They will lose you this war. A people who will not do what is necessary to win loses. And Major Reyes smiled, a hard, tired, knowing smile. The smile of someone who has heard this exact objection before and watched, every time, what happens to the people who make it. And she said, "That's what every enemy thinks, right up until it's the thing that beats them. You think our rules are a weakness. You're about to find out they're the most dangerous weapon in this entire war." She stood up, looking down at me. "Because here's what you don't understand, what your whole galaxy doesn't understand about the Geneva Suggestion. We're going to win this war. Completely. We're better at this than you are, and we're going to beat you, and it won't even be close. And then, and this is the part that's going to destroy you, then we're going to keep the rules anyway. In victory. With our boot on your throat and every reason and every right to make you pay, we're going to treat you with the exact correctness we're treating you with right now. And you're going to find out what that does to a war, to a galaxy that's watching, to an enemy who came expecting a monster and got this instead. You provoked the monster, Commandant. But the monster was never the thing you should have feared. The thing you should have feared is what we are instead of monsters. You're about to learn the difference. And God help you, God help your whole Imperium, you're about to learn it the hard way." Major Reyes was right about everything. That is the hardest part of this story to tell, because I have to tell you how completely a plan I helped build came apart, and how the thing we thought was human weakness turned out to be the weapon that destroyed us. Let me tell it the way I watched it happen, from inside, as a prisoner of the people I had wronged, with a front row seat to my own Imperium's defeat. The humans won the war, quickly and completely, exactly as she had promised. They were better at it than we were, better trained, better coordinated, better led, and possessed of that death-world ferocity that made them terrible in a fight. They drove us out of the border territories, and then they did not stop at the border. They pursued the war back toward Imperial space, because we had broken the peace, and a broken peace does not heal at the old line. Within a season, the Vorth Imperium, which had started this war certain of an easy victory over a savage we would isolate and crush, was losing badly, comprehensively, on every front. But the losing of the war is not the story. Empires lose wars, it happens, it is survivable. What was not survivable, what actually destroyed the Vorth Imperium, was not that the humans beat us. It was how they beat us. It was the Geneva Suggestion, the real one, the one we had gotten backwards, applied against us with a discipline that we had no answer for, because every answer we had was built for fighting a monster, and we were not fighting a monster. Here is what the real Geneva Suggestion looked like, applied against the Vorth Imperium. I watched all of it. The humans fought us with total force and total restraint, simultaneously, and the combination was a weapon we could not counter. They crushed our armies and treated every prisoner they took with the exact baffling correctness they had shown me. They drove into our territory and did not touch our civilians, did not burn our worlds, did not do a single one of the things a conquering army does, the things our own armies would have done, the things we had been counting on them doing. When they took a Vorth world, they took the military targets and left the people alone, and they fed the people whose supply lines the war had cut, and they tended the wounded, ours and theirs alike. And they did all of it while continuing to crush our military with overwhelming and undeniable force. And do you understand what that did? Let me make you understand, because it is the heart of the whole thing. We had broken the treaty to provoke human savagery, so the galaxy would recoil from Earth and side with us. Our entire diplomatic strategy depended on humans committing horrors that would make them the villain, and the humans, by simply keeping their own rules, took that weapon out of our hands entirely. There were no horrors. There was nothing for the galaxy to recoil from. Instead, the galaxy watched. The whole galaxy was watching, you understand. A war is a public thing. The galaxy watched the Vorth Imperium break a peace treaty in an unprovoked attack, and then watched the humans respond with a war fought so cleanly, so correctly, so honorably, that there was no atrocity to point to, no villainy to exploit, nothing for our propaganda to work with at all. We had told the galaxy humans were monsters. And then the galaxy got to watch, with its own eyes, the humans fight a war without committing a single monstrous act, while we who had broken the peace, we who had lied about them, stood exposed as the actual aggressors, the actual treaty breakers, the actual villains of the war. The sympathy we had expected to turn against Earth turned against us instead, completely. Other galactic powers who might have stayed neutral began to side with humanity, not because humanity pressured them, but because humanity had simply behaved in victory in a way that made siding with them easy and siding with us shameful. We had wanted the galaxy to see a monster. The galaxy saw a monster, all right. It just wasn't the one we'd pointed at. It was us. I understood it slowly, watching from captivity, and the understanding was the most humbling thing that ever happened to me. Restraint, I had told Major Reyes, is weakness. A people who will not do what is necessary to win, loses. That is what I believed, what the whole Imperium believed, what most of the galaxy believed. And it is the most dangerous lie a people can believe, and the humans disproved it in front of everyone. Because here is the truth I learned, watching the real Geneva Suggestion destroy my Imperium. Disciplined restraint, in a people powerful enough to do otherwise, is not weakness. It is the most powerful weapon there is, for a reason that has nothing to do with the battlefield. It is powerful because it cannot be used against you. Think about what every aggressor relies on, what we had relied on. We relied on provoking our enemy into becoming a villain, so that we could use their villainy against them. That is how wars of conquest are so often won. Not on the battlefield, but in the way you make your enemy into a monster the galaxy will let you destroy. And a people who keep their own rules, who will not be provoked into atrocity no matter how you strike at them, are immune to that entire strategy. You cannot make them the villain, because they will not do villainous things. You cannot isolate them, because their conduct gives no one any reason to abandon them. You cannot use their own savagery against them, because they will not be savage, not even when wronged, not even when winning, not even when you have given them every excuse. A people with that kind of discipline cannot be beaten the way wars are usually won, because the usual way of winning a war is to turn the enemy into something the world will let you crush, and these humans simply refused to become that thing, and in refusing, they took away the only weapon that could have beaten them. The Geneva Suggestion was never a list of horrors. It was the discipline not to commit them, and that discipline, I learned, is the single most unstoppable force in the galaxy, because there is no counter to a people who will not become the monster, no matter what you do to them. I have to tell you about the moment I broke, the moment my own understanding finished collapsing, because it was a small thing, not a battle, and small things are where these understandings actually live. It was late in the war, when the Imperium was clearly losing, and I was still a prisoner, and a group of newly captured Vorth soldiers were brought into the camp where I was held. They were young, terrified specifically because they, like all of us, had been raised on the Geneva Suggestion, and they had just been captured by humans, and they believed, as I had believed, that the horrors were now about to begin. I watched them come in, shaking, some of them weeping, bracing for atrocity. And I watched the humans process them with the same correctness they had shown me, feed them, tend their wounds, hold them humanely. And I watched the terror on those young Vorth faces slowly turn into confusion, and then into a kind of shattered disbelief, as the horrors they had been promised their whole lives simply did not come. And one of them, a boy really barely old enough to fight, turned to me, the senior officer present, and asked me the question I had asked Major Reyes, the same question in the same voice of dread. "Commandant, when does it start? The things they do?" And I had to tell him. I had to be the one to say it. I looked at this terrified boy who had been lied to his whole life, the way I had been lied to, the way our whole Imperium had lied to itself, and I said, "It doesn't start. It was never going to start. We were wrong about them, son. We were wrong about everything. They're not the monsters. They were never the monsters. We are the ones who broke the peace and lied about it, and they are the ones who won't even make us suffer for it. And that, my voice caught, I remember. That is the most ashamed I have ever been to wear this uniform. The boy stared at me. And then he did a thing I will never forget. He started to cry, not from fear now, but from something else, something like grief. The grief of a young person discovering that everything his people had taught him about the enemy, and therefore about themselves, was a lie. We had told our children that humans were monsters so that we could feel justified in becoming monsters ourselves. And the humans, by simply being decent, had exposed the whole lie, and the exposure broke something in every Vorth who witnessed it. Because once you have seen that the monster you were taught to fear is actually more honorable than you are, you cannot unsee it, and you have to live with the question of what that makes you. The Imperium's command did not understand what was happening to them, and their failure to understand is its own lesson. They kept trying to fight the war they had planned to fight, the war against the monster. They kept waiting for the humans to slip, to commit some atrocity they could publicize, to become the villain the whole strategy required. They kept telling the galaxy that humans were savages, even as the galaxy watched humans behave with more honor than the Imperium had ever shown. They could not adapt, because the thing they needed to fight did not exist. There was no human savagery to exploit, and you cannot build a strategy against a weakness your enemy does not have. The Imperial command had bet everything on humans being monsters, and when humans turned out not to be, the command had nothing, no fallback, no alternative, because their entire conception of the enemy had been wrong from the start. And the galaxy, watching, drew the conclusion the Imperium most feared. It concluded that the Vorth were the aggressors, which we were. It concluded that the humans were the honorable party, which they were. And it concluded something deeper and more lasting, something that would outlive the war, that a people who keep their own rules even in victory, even when wronged, even when they have every power and every excuse to do otherwise, are a people you can trust, and that trust, in a galaxy starved for it, is worth more than any fleet. The humans came out of the war not just victorious but trusted, in a way no power in the galaxy had been trusted in living memory, because they had shown, under the hardest possible test, exactly who they were. We had tried to show the galaxy a human monster. Instead, we had given the humans the perfect stage on which to show the galaxy a human as good as their word. And that gift, the gift of our own aggression, which let humanity prove its character in front of everyone, was the most catastrophic thing we could possibly have done to our own cause. The war ended, and then humanity did the thing that was actually infamous. The real Geneva Suggestion, the part the galaxy should have feared all along, the part that finished remaking everything I believed. They won completely. The Vorth Imperium was beaten, its armies broken, its worlds open, its command in collapse. We were a defeated aggressor that had broken a peace treaty to start an unprovoked war, and we lay at humanity's mercy, and the whole galaxy was watching to see what the victors would do to the people who had wronged them. And I, a prisoner who had been the architect of the whole catastrophe, watched too, and I braced old habits for the vengeance. The terms a victor imposes on a defeated aggressor are never gentle, and we deserved gentleness least of all. I expected the Imperium to be dismembered, punished, made to pay in the hard currency of the defeated. That is what victory is for. That is what we would have done. That is not what humanity did. And what they did instead is the truest thing I know about them, and the thing I have spent the rest of my life trying to explain. They did not dismember the Imperium. They did not punish the Vorth people for the crimes of the Vorth command. They held the actual architects of the war accountable, myself among them, and I will get to that, but the people, the ordinary Vorth, the soldiers who had been lied to, and the civilians who had wanted no war at all, them they did not punish. Instead, having won, having every right and every power to take their vengeance. The humans did the thing that no defeated people in the galaxy's history had ever been shown by a conqueror. They helped us rebuild. I have to tell you what that rebuilding looked like, because it is the part that breaks every Vorth who hears it, the way it broke me. The war had hurt us, wars do, and we had started this one and it had come home to us hard in the end. Our worlds were damaged, our supply lines shattered, our people facing the hunger and chaos that follow a lost war. And the humans, the victors, the people we had attacked without warning and lied about to the whole galaxy, the humans came into our broken worlds not as conquerors taking spoils but as help. They fed our hungry. They rebuilt what the war had broken, including the things their own forces had broken, fairly, in a war we had started. They tended our wounded. They restored the infrastructure of a defeated enemy, asked for no tribute, took no slaves, claimed no vengeance, and set about the patient, unglamorous work of helping the people who had wronged them get back on their feet. When I asked Major Reyes why, because of course I asked, I could not ask, she gave me an answer that I have carved into whatever I have in place of a soul. Because the war's over, she said, and you're not our enemy anymore. You were our enemy while you were fighting us. Now you're just people who lost a war your leaders started, and people who lost a war need help, and we don't have a rule that says the help is only for our own. The whole point of the Geneva stuff, the whole point of all of it is that there's a line under which everybody is just a person, enemy or not, winner or loser, and you don't go under that line. You attacked us. We beat you. That part's done. And now the only question left is whether we're the kind of people who kick a beaten enemy or the kind who help him up. And we decided that a long time ago, back on Earth, after we'd done enough kicking to last forever. We help him up. Even you. Especially you, honestly, because you're the ones who most need to see that there was always another way. And the galaxy watched all of it. That is the thing that finished the Imperium's defeat and remade the galaxy's understanding of power. The galaxy watched a victorious humanity, with a beaten aggressor at its mercy, choose to rebuild rather than punish, to help rather than avenge. And the galaxy, which had been raised on the same hard logic the Vorth believed, that power is for taking, that victory is for vengeance, that mercy is weakness. The galaxy watched humanity do the opposite of all of it and grow stronger for it. Because the Vorth, helped instead of punished, did not nurse the bitter grievance that creates the next war. We were disarmed not by force but by being helped, which is the one thing no defeated people knows how to stay angry at. And the other galactic powers watching understood that they had just seen something genuinely new, a great power that could be trusted not just to keep its word but to be decent in victory, which is the rarest and most valuable thing a power can be. And they aligned themselves with humanity not out of fear, but out of something far more durable. The simple, reasonable preference to stand with the people who, when they had all the power, used it well. The real Geneva Suggestion, I understood at last, was never about war at all. It was about this. It was the discipline that lets a people hold their line not just in the fury of battle, but in the temptation of victory, the hardest test of all. The one almost everyone fails, the moment when you have won and your enemy is helpless, and every instinct and every tradition says now take your due. Humanity passed that test, in front of the whole galaxy, and in passing it they did the thing our savagery strategy could never have done to them. They made themselves the people everyone wanted to stand beside, the trusted center of a galaxy that had never had a trusted center. And they did it not with fleets or weapons, but with the infamous, world-changing human refusal to go under the line, even in victory, even against the people who had wronged them most. I have to tell you what became of me because I was the architect, and accountability is part of the truth. The humans held me accountable. I want to be clear that this is not a story where the aggressor faces no consequences. That would be its own kind of injustice. And the humans were not unjust. I had broken a peace treaty and launched an unprovoked war that got thousands killed on both sides, and I answered for it, was tried, fairly, openly, according to those same rules, and held responsible for what I had done. The accountability was real. But even there, even in holding me responsible, the humans kept their line. I was held accountable as a person who had done a terrible thing, not made into a monster to be destroyed. I was judged, not tortured, punished, not broken. And the contrast between how I had expected to be treated, the Geneva Suggestion, the catalogue of horrors, and how I was actually treated, accountability without cruelty, justice without vengeance, was the final lesson, the one that completed my education in what humanity actually was. I served my accounting, and when it was done, I did the only thing that seemed to me worth doing with the rest of a life I had nearly thrown away on a lie. I spent it telling the truth about the Geneva Suggestion. I became, of all things, a teacher to the young Vorth, to anyone in the galaxy who would listen, telling the true story of the war the Imperium started, and the truth about the people we had attacked, and the real meaning of the thing we had so catastrophically misunderstood. I, who had led the strike that broke the peace, spent my last decades undoing the lie that had made the strike possible, because I had seen the truth from the inside, and the dead of that war were owed someone who would tell it. I am old now and near my end, and I have told this story more times than I can count, and I will tell it one final time, the way I most want it remembered. The galaxy feared the Geneva Suggestion. We feared it so much that we broke a peace and started a war to get ahead of it, certain that humans were monsters who treated the rules of war as a to-do list of horrors. We had it exactly backwards. The Geneva Suggestion was never a list of the terrible things humans do. It was a list of the terrible things humans refuse to do, the lines they will not cross, even in war, even in fury, even in victory, even when wronged, even when every power and every excuse is theirs. And that refusal, I learned, is not the weakness we took it for. It is the most unstoppable force in the galaxy. Because you cannot defeat a people who will not become the monster. The whole way of war that the galaxy had always known, provoke your enemy into atrocity, make them the villain, turn the galaxy against them and crush the isolated monster. That whole machine has no answer for a people who simply will not be the monster, no matter what you do to them. You cannot make them the villain. You cannot isolate them. You cannot use their own savagery against them, because they keep their savagery leashed even when you would not. And then, having beaten you cleanly, they do the most devastating thing of all. They help you up. They prove in front of the whole galaxy that there was always another way. That power did not have to mean cruelty. That victory did not have to mean vengeance. That the line under which everyone is just a person could be held even by the strong, even by the victorious, even against the ones who wronged them most. We broke the peace to make humanity into a monster the galaxy would help us destroy. Instead, we handed humanity the perfect stage on which to prove they were not monsters at all. That they were, in fact, the most disciplined, most honorable, most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever seen. Dangerous precisely, because there was no way to corrupt them into the villainy that the galaxy's whole way of war depended on. The most frightening thing about humanity is not what they are capable of doing to you. It is what they refuse to do to you, even when they could, even when you have earned it. A people who will not go under the line cannot be beaten, because the only way the galaxy ever knew how to win was to drag the enemy under the line first, and humans simply will not go. We learned that the hard way. We broke a peace to provoke a monster, and we found, instead, the one thing in all the galaxy that we had no weapon against. People who would not become monsters, no matter what we did to make them. That is the real Geneva Suggestion. It is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. And I thank whatever gods there are that I lived long enough to learn it was never a list of horrors at all, but a promise, kept by a people good enough to keep it even against the likes of us. I broke the peace, they kept the line. And in the end, the line was stronger than anything we ever broke.